Go ahead and read, starting with immigrants. Lena, loud and slow.
Immigrants. During the 1800s.
A little slower, a little slower. Very loud, nice, but a little too fast.
Immigrants. During the 1800s and early 1900s, millions of immigrants came to the United States. Most came by boat from Europe, arriving in New York. Their first stop was Ellis Island, the nation's largest immigrant center.
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Immigrants came to the United States for different reasons. Most had difficult lives in their homeland. Many were poor. Some had been treated badly because of their race or religion.
Remember, we're on page 129. Already said that a couple times. Remember, during this time period, America had a good amount of people, but not anywhere near as much as there is now, or as many as there were in other countries. Think about England. People had lived there for thousands and thousands of years. So the cities were extremely focused. The cities were extremely overcrowded. There was a lot going on. There weren't many jobs left, and the jobs that were left, nobody really wanted. And in some places, people were being persecuted for the religion they followed. So those were two of the biggest reasons. They wanted new opportunities to make money. They wanted religious freedom. So a lot of people started coming, especially in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Read next. I must have put your stick back in there. Michaela.
Here, immigrants hope to make a better life for them. The United
Remember, if there's a period, do you keep going? Or do you pause and then start again? So your voice goes back up. It goes down right before a period and then goes back up because you're starting a new one. So it's not here, immigrants hope to make a better life for them, because for them is another sentence. So start again.
Here, immigrants hope to make a better life for them. For them, the United States was the land of opportunity. A person who worked hard could be a successful immigrant.
Oh, you're not stopping at periods, and that doesn't say successful. Immigrants is a whole nother paragraph, so it's definitely not part of that word, not part of that sentence. So start that sentence again. A person
who worked hard could be a success.
Okay? So they knew in England, in their overcrowded cities, it really didn't matter how hard they worked. There were a bunch of other people doing the same thing and getting more recognition. They didn't need more of people doing the same thing. But they knew coming to America, well, there were more chances to be successful. Read next. Smith. Try to, if you just try, we'll see. If not, I'll get your face shield and you can start tomorrow.
Immigrants moved to every part of the nation. However, millions stayed in the Northeast to work in factories. Most settled in cities such as New York City, Trenton, and Boston. The result was enormous urban growth, or growth of cities in the region.
So remember we talked about that. When people came from all over, they came in through the cities, and we talked about the jobs were where? Where were the jobs? Mason. But where in the Northeast? They came into the cities, and where were the jobs? Were they out in the country and they had to go explore new places to find the jobs? No, where were they? They came into the cities and the jobs were in the, well, which is an example of a, not a state. Well, New York is a state, but in this case, New York, does it say New York State? What does it say? So New York is an example of a city. So they came, the jobs were in the cities. Did they leave the cities, Mason? No, they stayed in the cities. Well, the more people that move into a city, what happens to that city? Zadie?
It starts to get overcrowded.
Well, it gets
Bigger.
bigger. That's what urban growth is. People come from all over. They come in through the cities. They stay in the cities, so the cities get bigger. At the time, they still weren't necessarily overcrowded because they had lots of space to move out. Because think about it. Were there as many people or cities or anything in the United States at this time? So there was lots of space to make the cities bigger. Now, though, is there as much space to make cities bigger? Because think about it. Say Memphis gets a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. Well, eventually it's going to run into Jackson. And if Jackson's already there in a city, can Memphis take over? No. Think about what you know about the Northeast. We have New York City, not far away is Boston, really close is Philadelphia. So as the cities get bigger, they meet. And can one city say, well, I'm going to take over and go over your border? So there's only so much growth they can do. Back then, they had lots of space between the cities. Now, though, New York City and Philadelphia and places like that, they can't get any bigger. They've already met other cities that stopped it from getting any bigger. But back then, they had lots of space to take over. Okay, read next. Mason, loud and slow. So you'll have to turn your body just a little bit this way. You don't have to turn your chair. You can even just turn your head.
New immigrants settled mostly in crowded neighborhoods with others from their countries. To make a living, most new immigrants worked long hours in factories. Some immigrants started businesses such as restaurants and shops. Others helped build bridges, buildings, and roads.
So, even though they had chances to make better lives in the United States, it was not easy. Because it says they moved into neighborhoods with others from their countries. And even though the cities weren't as big as they are now, the neighborhoods could only grow so much because then you're going to run into another neighborhood where other people lived. And think about it. If you came to a country from Germany and all you spoke was German, where are you going to want to live? Cullen?
In Germany.
But you're coming to America and you speak German. Listen to the question, please. Where are you going to want to live? You're moving from Germany. You only speak German. Where are you going to want to live? Come on, guys, think. Smith.
With the other Germans.
With the other Germans. Look, think. Don't just say, I have no idea, like, what neighborhood they want to live in. Think about it. I know you don't know neighborhoods of New York City. I don't know neighborhoods of New York City other than Little Italy and Chinatown. But think about it. If I only speak German, where do I want to live? Near other people that also speak German. So that's what was happening. And then specific neighborhoods were getting overcrowded. And then it says they would work in factories. Well, back then, factories paid like 10 cents a day. So you wanted to work as many hours as you possibly could to make as much money. And then eventually, maybe you could have enough money to start your own restaurant or shop. Otherwise, until then, you got to work in the factories. You have to work building bridges, buildings, and roads. And do you think those are easy jobs? No. Definitely not physically easy. I mean, look at these little kids on these machines. They have to climb up. It's pretty dangerous. Look at all these machines they have to take care of. The grown-ups had to do that too. Let's look at this, this diagram on page 129. Pay close attention because you might see a similar diagram later. Not the exact same, like in science, but a similar one. If you're paying attention, then you'll know, okay, the one I see later looks different, but I read it the same way. This is like math, where I'm telling you how to solve it, so that if you're listening, when you have another problem, you already know how to solve it. You're just changing the numbers. It's the same. You will see a diagram, I'm telling you right now, you will see a diagram that does not look exactly the same, but you read it the same way. So if you're listening, you'll know how to read the other one. If you're not listening, well, you're out of luck. I can't force you to, and I'm not going to try anymore. I'm not going to try to force you. So, let's look at this diagram. What does this diagram show? Aaron?
Immigration to the United States.
What else? From?
From 1904 to 2000.
So it shows immigration to the United States from 1904 to 2014. I'm sorry, to 2004. So if you look down at the bottom, you have different years. It starts with 1904. The next line going up and down is 1929. The next year is 1954. The next year is 1979, and the next year is 2004. I'm reading these, and some of you are staring at my face. Is the diagram on my face? Did I not realize that it jumped from the page to my face? So how are you following if I'm reading this and you're looking at my face? You're not. So at the bottom, we have years. On the side, we have a number of people. And you see each number of people and each year have a line. The years have lines going up and down. The number of people have lines going from side to side. Where the year and the number of people meet, we have a dot. This is called, and then we connected all the dots to see a shape. This is called a line graph. I think we've done these, maybe not line graphs. We might not have done line graphs yet. I can't remember if I'm remembering from earlier this year or a different year. But line graphs plot points on a line. I think we did a line graph. We did the one where it was like temperatures of like the Grand Canyon or something. I think it was the temperatures of the Grand Canyon. I think we did. Oh, duh, right here. You can see it. So we did it earlier in the year. This one, Death Valley. So we're going to read this the same way. Wherever the year and the number meet, they put a dot, and then they connect it to show what the growth looks like. So in 1904, how many people came to the United States from other countries? How many people moved or immigrated from other countries to the United States? Zari.
800,000.
About 800,000. You can see that the dot isn't exactly on that corner, but it's very close. So it's about 800,000. Then in 1929, did the number of people coming to immigrating to the United States go up or go down? Zadie.
It went down.
It went down. A little bit?
A lot.
A lot. You can see because on line graphs, the steeper the line, that means this is steeper than like this. Steep is how fast it goes up or down. The steeper a line, the quicker the growth or the decline. Down is a decline, up is growth. So it went down pretty fast, pretty quickly. To how many immigrants?
About 300,000.
About 300,000. Very good. Zadie noticed that the dot wasn't exactly where those two lines met, but it was close, so she knew it was about 300,000. Then in 1954, did the immigration decline or grow? Cullen.
Decline.
Decline. Did it decline a lot in those years?
No.
Not really. Do you see how it's not very steep at all? It's very close. About how many immigrants came to the United States in 1954?
200,000.
About 200,000. And then in 1979, what happened to the immigration to the United States? Victoria. It grew by a lot or a little or kind of in the middle? Kind of in the middle. So immigration grew to how many people?
It's bigger than 4.
Where does that look like? About what number
It looks,
is the immigration in 1979?
it looks about.
Is it about 500,000 or about 400,000? Remember, what's in between 400,000 and 500,000? What's in the middle? Lena?
450.
Not 450 though, that's 450, but you're on the right track. So between 400,000 and 500,000 is
450.
not 450. That's lower than 400,000, but you're close. You're on the right track.
1,000.
So what is it?
450,000.
450,000. Remember, we've done this before when you're right in between the two numbers. 400,000 and 500,000. If you're right in between, you keep the same first digit. You change the second digit to 5 because what's in between 0 and 10? Class? 5. And then the rest of the digits stay the same. So that's all you do. When you're between two numbers, like two multiples of 10, 20, 30, 10, 100, 1,000, 100,000, whatever, you keep the same first digit, you change the second digit to a 5, and then all the digits after stay zeros, however many there are. Keep that in mind. Then in 2004, what happened to immigration? Mason, what is that word we use? It went up, so did it grow or did it decline? It grew by a lot. You already told me. So how many people immigrated in 2004? Ooh, you can use the same. Very good, about 950,000 people. Because you can see, it's about halfway between. Well, Mason knew if halfway between 400,000 and 500,000 is 450,000, then halfway between 900,000 and 1 million, well, we keep the first digit the same, second digit becomes 5, rest of the digits become the same. Okay, halfway between is 950 million. Keep that in mind. So what happened overall? What was the trend in immigration to the United States between 1904 and 2004? What happened? What does it look like happened? Smith?
It grew and declined.
Did it grow and decline? What happened first, the growth or the decline?
The growth.
Cullen?
It declined, then grew.
It declined, then grew. Remember, decline means go down. So we started with 800,000 in 1904, all the way down to 200,000 in 1954, and then it grew back up to over 900,000 in 2004. So this type of graph shows us the trend. It goes down and then back up. So that tells us immigration declined and then grew. Okay, turn the page. Zari, read next.
City, growth, and connection.
Oh, try again. You're adding letters, you're taking off letters. You're using those same base words, but then you're adding and taking off letters. Read them exactly as they appear, please.
Cities grow and connect.
Okay, keep going.
Improve transportation, growing industries, and immigration helped cities in the Northeast grow. Today, the Northeast is one of the most crowded regions
in the United States.
So think about immigration in the late 1800s and 1900s. Think about what we've read so far. Why do you think the Northeast is one of the most crowded cities in the United States? Think about what we've talked about immigration so far. Why is the Northeast so crowded? Why not the Southeast or the Midwest or the Northwest or the Southwest? Think about it. Zari?
The Northeast grew because that's a city.
Okay, but there's cities all over the country. There's Seattle in the Northwest. There's Los Angeles in the Southwest. There's Atlanta in the Southeast. There's Chicago in the Midwest. But why did the Northeast end up being the largest region? Smith?
Because as people came in, most people didn't leave. They
Okay.
just stayed in the Northeast, and then more people kept coming, so it kept filling up.
You're on the right track. Where did immigrants come to first? Victoria. Where did immigrants and explorers first start exploring the United States?
Ellis Island.
Is that where the explorers first came? Where did the explorers first? Carla, I don't know what's on that TV, but it has nothing to do with school. Where did the first explorers to the United States end up? Zadie.
The North.
The Northeast. Where did the first settlers settle? The Northeast. Where did the first immigrants start coming to establish settlements? Aaron. The Northeast. Then, as more and more people came, well, yeah, the cities got crowded. So then people started spreading out. But what part of the United States was the first part to be explored, settled, and immigrated to? Colin.
The Northeast.
The Northeast. So it's just been explored longer. It hasn't existed longer because the rest of the country did exist, just nobody had explored it yet. But the Northeast is so much more crowded because that's where we started exploring the country. Okay, see a lot of people zoning out, but that's on you. If you can't do the homework tonight, I better not get a single email from parents being like, this is too much homework. My child has no idea how to do it. Well, I'm going to tell them it's because your child was not paying attention at all. Kingston, read next. And just tuned me out and ignored me the whole time. That's what I will tell them. Kingston, go ahead and read.
The Northeast big city.
Well, first start with this. Remember, read the subheadings and subtitles.
A region of cities. The Northeast, the Northeast big cities include Boston, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh,
Newark.
and New York City. In fact, New York City has more people than any other city in the United States.
My family actually first came to the United States and then settled in Pittsburgh. So my family is one of those that came in the 1920s, settled in Pittsburgh, saved up money working in factories, and then opened a grocery store. Keep going. They came in through Ellis Island too. So this is not only a history of the Northeast, but also a history of Ms. Hollis's family. And probably a lot of your families too.
As Northeast cities grew, so did the suburbs around them. The result was growth of
That's a short O sound.
metropolitan areas.
Keep going.
A metropolitan area is a large city together with its suburbs.
So what's our next word? Long O. I'm sorry, short O. So what is it?
Metropolitan area.
Metropolitan area. So it's a long O, then a short O. Metropolitan area. And what is a metropolitan area, Kingston?
A large city together with its suburbs.
A large city together with its suburbs. So, an example that you would know would be the Memphis metropolitan area. Memphis is the large city, but then the metropolitan area, the Memphis metropolitan area also includes the suburbs. So Memphis is the city, but the metropolitan area also includes Germantown, Collierville, Cordova, Arlington, Millington, South Haven, West Memphis, even up to Drummond's and, Covington, Atoka.
Westwood.
Westwood is part of the city, it's just a neighborhood.
Oh.
So like Westwood, East Memphis, Midtown, those are all neighborhoods within the large city. But the suburbs are places like, if you live in Germantown, instead of writing your address as whatever street, Memphis, Tennessee, you write whatever street, Germantown, Tennessee. Or West Memphis, Arkansas, or South Haven, Mississippi, or Collierville, Tennessee, or Drummond's, Tennessee. So a suburb actually has a different name. Your address has a different name. It doesn't say the name of the city. But a neighborhood, like you don't write Westwood, Tennessee, you write Memphis, Tennessee. And you just know that you live in the Westwood neighborhood. So that's the difference. Yeah, that's the part of town it is, but not the name of the city. Yes, but, so a metropolitan area is a large city together with its suburbs. Yes, quickly.
Is High Point a suburb?
No, that's a neighborhood. That's like Westwood. Okay, or it's a part of town, but it's still Memphis. Sorry, Kingston, keep going. So yes, as the cities got crowded, did people immediately move like 3 states over? Did they? No, they just started moving out to the suburbs. They started making smaller little towns right outside the large cities. So like a suburb of New York would be, I'm trying to think. No, Chinatown's a neighborhood. A suburb of New York City would be, I don't really know actually. I don't live there, so.
Next opinion.
Would it be Manhattan?
No, Manhattan is a borough, so it's like a part of town. So Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Harlem, I think Harlem? I don't remember, but there's 5 boroughs.
Buffalo?
Buffalo is a totally different city, but it is in the same, it's across the state, like diagonal. I'm not really sure actually, now that I think about it. I mean, there's like New Haven, Connecticut. That would be a suburb of, I think. But people started moving to the suburbs. They didn't move 3 states over to a brand new city, they just moved to a one small city over. And so then not only did the cities grow, but the metropolitan areas grew because they made more and more suburbs. Kingston, keep reading.
A metropolitan area often stretches across state borders.
So we see that here because our metropolitan area includes parts of Mississippi and parts of Arkansas because South Haven, Mississippi is part of, who's been to the outlets? Who's been to the outlet mall? The one close to here. That's in our metropolitan area, but it's in Mississippi. Who's been right across the bridge? That's also part of our metropolitan area, but we're in Arkansas. So metropolitan areas, the large city together with its suburbs, sometimes cross state borders, which we see here because South Haven, Mississippi is one of our suburbs, and West Memphis, Arkansas is one of our suburbs. So the Memphis metropolitan area not only covers southwestern Tennessee, but also northwestern Mississippi, and Mideastern, southeastern Arkansas. Okay, keep going. Read that last little bit.
The largest metropolitan area in the nation covers parts of New York and New Jersey.
So, if you've ever watched shows or movies that take place in New York City, they probably also talk about New Jersey at some point. That's because New Jersey is so close that part of the New York metropolitan area is also in New Jersey. Like I think Newark is part of the New York metropolitan area, but Newark is in New Jersey. If you've ever flown to New York City, you might have gone to the airport. You might have landed at the airport in Newark, which is a whole different state, but it's right there. That's why metropolitan areas are able to have more than one state, because if your big city is right near where other states touch, like Memphis is right in the corner, so it's right near Arkansas and Mississippi, that means the metropolitan area is going to go into another state. Read next, Aaron. Loud, 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 because you have a long paragraph. And I don't want to have to pick somebody else halfway through. Think about how Kingston said it and how I said it many times each. Louder.
Most metropolitan areas in the Northeast grew along the Atlantic coast.
Why did they grow along the Atlantic coast? Zadie? Why did these metropolitan areas grow along the Atlantic coast?
Because they were growing the way towards the coast.
They grew along the coast. Why did they grow along the coast? You can choose to listen, or you can choose to just think about something else entirely. It's not right here. It's not here. It doesn't say why. You have to think about what you've learned. It's called critical thinking. Think about what we talked about earlier. Smith?
Because people came from the sea, and it was easier just to stay along the Atlantic coast.
Good. Because they came from the Atlantic Ocean. That's how they got here, by traveling the Atlantic Ocean. So it was a lot easier to just sail the boat down a little bit than it was to get off the boat and walk to the next place where there was space. Thank you for thinking. Maybe you can model thinking for everybody, because I guess my modeling thinking is not working. So maybe a student's modeling thinking will work. Okay, keep reading, Aaron.
Over time, their boundaries drew closer together. Eventually, the metropolitan areas formed along the chain of cities stretching from New Hampshire to Virginia.
A little louder.
These cities make up the nation's largest.
Use the pronunciation key. Remember, if you have an H after a, well, no, just try it. Megalopolis. Megalopolis. So, megalopolis.
These cities make up the nation's largest
Short O, long O. Megalopolis.
The largest make up the nation's largest megalopolis. A megalopolis is an urban region formed when two or more metropolitan areas grow together. So
number 8 is what word, Aaron?
megalopolis.
Megalopolis. Which is a what?
An urban region formed when two or more metropolitan areas grow together.
An urban region formed when two or more metropolitan areas grow together. So a megalopolis is an urban region formed when two or more metropolitan areas grow together. So when that large city with its suburbs starts getting closer and closer and closer to another large city with its suburbs, they meet, and then it becomes a megalopolis. That means one day, probably many years from now, as the metropolitan area of Nashville and the metropolitan area of Memphis get bigger and bigger and bigger, one day, many, many, many years from now, we may become a megalopolis with Nashville. Now that would be many, many years because it's like 300 miles. But if we look at this megalopolis in the Northeast, which is in the picture on page 131, look how much space that is. This whole orange area shows the area where this megalopolis is. If we look at these red shaded parts, there's each individual megalopolis. Soon, all of these megalopolises are going to grow together to, instead of being 1, 2, 3, 4, and then some little megalopolises, it's just going to be one massive, massive, mega megalopolis. But right now, so everywhere from Boston to Washington, D.C., that is like 300 miles. There are pretty much people and cities that entire way. Like you can take a train from Washington, D.C. to Boston, and you will see very, very, very rare forests. You will mostly see houses, buildings, roads, things like that. Like right now, if you've ever taken the train to Chicago, you'll see a whole lot of farmland and forests between here and Chicago. There's not a whole lot. But if you take a train from Washington, D.C. to Boston, I've never done this, I can just tell you based on what I've learned about this area, you will mostly see houses, buildings, roads, factories, businesses, things like that. You won't see many forests, you won't see probably any farmland, maybe a little here and there. That's because this is a megalopolis. The people and the cities have grown and grown and grown until they meet. And then here's where the New York metropolitan area ends, and literally here is where the Philadelphia metropolitan area begins. You can see, find New York. You can see where New York and Newark are part of the same piece of the megalopolis. And then you go down and you see where Wilmington, Delaware, and Philadelphia and Trenton are all part of the same piece of the megalopolis. That's because their metropolitan areas are so big that they hit each other. They ran in. They got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until they stopped growing because, well, here's a new city. You can't take over part of the other city. Okay, read the last paragraph. Yes, quickly. It does. It does. It sounds kind of like a made-up word, but it's real. I thought it was a slang term that I learned. One of my college professors told me about it. This megalopolis actually has a name. It's called Boss Wash. Why do you think it's called Boss Wash? Why do you think this megalopolis on page 31, megalopolis on page 131 is referred to as Boswash? Michaela?
Maybe because they got together so big, and it got so big that
You're on the right track. But why'd they give it the specific name Boswash? I'll spell it. Maybe that'll help. Zari.
Maybe because it starts in Boston.
Okay. Well, why'd they call it Boswash? Colin?
They started it in Boston, and plus Boston is close to the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, what does that have to do with wash? It is Bos because it starts in Boston. Where does the wash come from? Colin?
It starts in Boston and ends in Washington.
Good. It starts in Boston and ends in Washington, D.C. Those two cities are like 300 something miles away from each other. But that's how many people live in this area. That's how many people live and work. There are people who may work in Philadelphia, find Philadelphia, and they commute to New York City. That means they live in Philadelphia, but they go to work in New York City every day. That's how many people live in this area. Okay, read that last paragraph. Carla.
Traveling between city today. Today, people can travel easily between. My friend is on the phone. Just
That's
to
okay.
let you know.
No, we can hear you more than we can hear him. We can hear him a little bit, but you're louder, so keep going.
Okay. Easily between the cities and the Northeast. Modern highways include turnpikes.
Ooh, we know about turnpikes. What's a turnpike? Mason. Good. It's a highway where you have to pay a toll. Good. Keep going, Carla.
Or a road.
Toll road. That's a T, not an R. Go slow. I know you know.
Road. Crisscross the regions. Airlines make many flights each day between modern cities.
Not modern cities.
Major cities.
Good. Go slow.
Passenger train also run many times daily, connecting Boston, New York City, Philadelphia,
Good.
and other Northeast cities.
Good. So, that person I told you a little while ago who lives in Philadelphia and works in New York City, well, how do they get to their job every day, do you think? How do they get to and from? Mason? They take a passenger train. So when we think about taking a train, we probably think of people like going on a vacation and they're taking a train. But up in the Northeast, they take the train just to go to work in the morning and to get home in the afternoon. Not the subway, but an actual train. Because again, there's so many people that in order to get to their job, they may have to live like an hour or two away. Not like Zari, who lives like 41 minutes away, but this is like an hour on a train that goes faster than a car, or two, every day. So, very good. Okay, go ahead and read the summary of this chapter, Cullen.
Summary. Changes in transpiration.
Not transpiration. You're close, but you missed a letter. Well, you missed a letter.
Changes and
It's not transpiration. It's transpiration is when the leaves, the water evaporates from the leaves. We're not talking about water evaporating from leaves. Who can help her out? Zari?
Transportation.
Transportation. Don't skip letters.
changes in transpiration.
Not transpiration. Zari, say it again. Listen to Zari.
Transportation.
Changes in transpiration and power help cities in the Northeast grow and connect during the Industrial Revolution. Immigrants also commuted.
No, cover up. TRIB. Con. Cover up CON.
Turb.
Not turb, but close. Just flip-flop I and R. So instead of turb, it's who can help her out? What is that word? Michaela?
Trip.
Well, but what's that whole word?
Oh, contribute.
Not contribute, but contribute.
Contribute.
There's letters at the end. Zadie?
Contribute.
What is, remember, TR makes the tr. So what is the word? Lena? Not contribute. You gotta say all the letters. There's no such thing as a silent D. That does not exist. Smith?
Contributed.
Contributed. So read the sentence again.
Immigrants also contributed.
Guys, come on. You've got to say the N sounds. Almost every single one of you are reading the first little bit and then guessing the rest. You're not reading the words. You have to read and think about the words. It's not just about getting from the beginning to the end. It's about getting from the beginning to the end and knowing what happens in between. Read the whole word. Don't just read the first 4, 5, 6 letters and then guess the rest. Like when you read, those of you that read contribute, you read the C, the O, the N, the T, the R, the B, the U, the T, and the E. And skip the D. There is no such thing as a silent D. It does not exist. Not in English. It's contributed. Contributed. So read it again, Colin.
Immigrants also contributed to urban growth. Today, people and goods move more easily from one city to another.
Okay. Everybody, look at the front. The front says page 36, down at the bottom. The top says growth of the Northeast, and it has page 36. That is the front. That is where your name, number, and date go. If you're not listening now, you're going to lose out on this. I'm not explaining it again. The directions say, fill in each blank with the correct word or phrase to complete the sentence. Use the terms below. That means this is your word bank. I'm going to say this one time. Spell the words right. There's no excuse other than just complete laziness. I can already guarantee you there's going to be a couple of you, no matter what, you're going to spell them wrong. Even though they're right here and all you have to do is copy it. Letter for letter, word for word. I'm going to take off, I'm going to take off points and I'm just not even going to give you a chance to fix it. And that's it. If you spell it wrong, you know what? Yeah, if you spell it wrong, the whole problem's wrong. That's it. Even if I know what word you're talking about, there's no excuse. It's laziness. So you'll just lose any point, the whole point. Not half. I'm tired of that because that's not working. So you're going to lose the whole point. Read your sentence after you fill in the blank. Because some of you will write a word that makes no sense. I'm going to tell you a sentence that I wouldn't be surprised if I end up getting from some of you. Virginia are factories that use machines to weave cloth. Now, some of you will put that, and then you won't read to understand that you just wrote the fact that a state is a factory, and that state that is a factory uses machines to weave cloth. Some of you will also say, Thomas Edison are waterways dug across land. And you will not go back to read to realize that you just said that a person is a waterway that somebody digs out of land. People must pay to drive on Alexander Graham Bell. And you won't go back to read to realize that you just said that somebody has to pay to run over Alexander Graham Bell with a car. And I see a lot of you laughing, and it is funny until it happens every single time. And then you're like, what is this person even doing? Because some of you will do it for real. And you have done it for real. It is funny. But there are people, multiple, most of you at some point, have done something exactly like that. Now look at the back. This is a bar graph, not a line graph, but it says kind of the same thing. Wherever the bar graph ends, which we've also done bar graphs. I think we did those in reading. Wherever the bar graph ends, the top of it, that's the number. That's like that point on the line graph. It says the bar graph below shows where most immigrants to the United States came from between 1841 and 1900. Study the graph and then answer the questions. For numbers 1 through 5, you do not have to write in complete sentences, but I do need to point something out. Look at the numbers on the side of the bar graph. On the side, not the bottom, because are those even numbers? So those of you, when I said look at the numbers, and then you looked at the bottom and we're looking at that, which I can guarantee you some of you were, are those numbers? What are they? Lena?
Words.
Words. Specifically, what words that mean what?
Proper noun? Wait, no. City. State.
Not states, not cities. Michaela? Places, countries. So those of you that when I said, look at the numbers on the side, and then you immediately looked at the words on the bottom, just realize what you did. And how silly that is. And how it's funny, but you still did it. The numbers on the side, it says number of immigrants in millions. So this 3.5 does not mean 3.5 immigrants. It means 3.5 million immigrants. So there are questions that say something like how many more immigrants came from this place than this place. And I can guarantee you that some of you are going to say, oh, well, 3.5. So you're telling me 3.5 immigrants, 3.5 people, that means 3 whole people and half a person, came from Germany. Okay. When you have to write a number of people, what had you better write after that number? Victoria? Million. Otherwise, you're telling me that 3.5 people came from this place. 3 whole people, and then a half a person that had been cut in half. At the waist or straight down the middle, I don't know. That's what you're telling me. Again, I know it's funny. So I don't understand why so many of you still do that. And if I hadn't said that, I would say probably most, if not all of you, would have done that. Because I did the reading for you. But when you had to do it yourself, it just doesn't happen. And it should be happening in a 4th grade classroom. Otherwise, we wouldn't have something like this. It would say 3.5 million. But they're trying to see, are you reading? Well, in this case, your teacher read it to you. So were you reading? We'll never know now. But I knew I had to say it. Otherwise, I'd say 10 to 12 of you would have turned in something that said, about how many immigrants came from Britain? 3. 3 immigrants came from Britain from 1841 to 1900. That's what most of you, if not all of you, would have said if I had not just said that out loud. So please keep that in mind. Okay, go ahead. You have until 2:30.